Yep, I think we're live. So welcome to this week's episode of 11 People. This is episode number 8. Tony, can you believe that? We're still finance, but we're at episode number 8.
Episode number 8.
Let me bring this
Can you believe that?
We're still finance. This is what happens when you're not experiencing the studio work. In any case, this is the show. I'm actually gonna read something that the way Tony described the show the other day. I'm just gonna steal this from him, where he said it is a project or podcast called 11 People, a nod to an Eric Hobsbawm line referencing Benedict Anderson, that nowhere is the imagined community of millions more real than in the form of 11 players on a football field. But we are focused here not on the year and now. We are focusing on the year now of football, but through a left political lens, borrowing from C.L.R. James's famous observation about cricket. What do they know? What do they of cricket know? Only cricket know. Mm-hmm. So I like the way that that's like marketing 101. You did a far better job.
Always my spiritual leader and favorite revolutionary priest in Cape Town, Father Michael Weeder, sometimes says in poetic form.
The second week that Michael Weeder's getting
exactly, and this time it's Dankie Jesus for the cricket.
Well, I'm hoping at some point we can bring him on the show, because I think he has this poetry book, which title I now forget. He brought out the book. I think it came out earlier this year, and I bought a copy. And there's a lot of poems in there about his family. I think his father was a football player and a cricket player, I think, in fact, playing mostly like in the suburbs of Cape Town before or kind of at the beginnings of forced removals. And you quoted him before about him being taken by some men from the Caribbean to an Irish pub. I think they were Arsenal supporters or something. But we definitely have to bring Michael Weeder onto the show. But in any case, today we don't have it. We have some good guests that we've got lined up for the future. So I don't want to give away. This is just to tell you, come back. It's going to get more interesting on the show. But I don't want to say who these guests are. When we have them in the bag, you can see like Tony's like sly little smile right there. When we have them in the bag, we'll be ready to disclose them, and it's going to change the show somewhat. But today, I think we just kind of freestyling. What's kvetching again? It's like to kvetch.
Kvetching is old men sitting around complaining, like us, about our health.
Hey, I think you more than I do. I'm trying to be healthy these days, bro.
Yeah, no, you're looking pretty good. And there you've got your Elage Diouf 2002 era Amadou Bamba shirt on.
Remember when we lifted it up against France, right?
Yeah.
I think it was also who scored the goal again in that game against France?
Papa Bobo Diop.
Yeah, I think he had the same thing. I think he was also showing it off. So people who don't know, that's the kind of the spiritual leader, or almost in depending on how you frame it, like the patron saint or something of Murid, of like the in Senegal. So it's kind of a sort of Sufi type. Am I describing it correctly? I'm going to get in trouble here.
I think so, but maybe the bigger context is that he was basically leading a religious movement, but in an anti-colonial rebellion against France. And they exiled him.
And it's kind of a much like, you'll spot these dudes like in big northern cities, often dreadlocked, who are like, some of them, they're part of these brotherhoods. So they're in trade. So you'll see them in New York, you'll see them in Paris, Marseille. But it's like Youssou N'Dour made an album, I remember, which I like, which sort of like went about this kind of the tensions and the differences with sort of Orthodox Islam. So it's a very kind of West African, eclectic form of Islam. I understand that it's also related to sort of southern Libya, southern Algeria. And I've been to Senegal, so I'm just going to say that.
They have a holy city called Touba. And they send, wherever they work in the world, they send money back to Touba as like to build up the center.
I like wearing this T-shirt. I like people asking me like who that is. I have another T-shirt that has Antonio Gramsci on it. So I was on the Cape Cod. Well, I'm giving away that I went to Cape Cod. I don't know what's I'm going to do for my working class credentials.
Mm-hmm.
But I was in Provincetown, so I had to go to like this big stop and shop. It's like, like these kind of like a big department store where you can buy anything, and they had like a pharmacy at the back. I think I told you the story. So I was just looking for some kind of cold medicine or something. And as I walk up to the counter, the pharmacist looks at the T-shirt and he goes, "Who is that? That kind of looks like my brother." And I said, "No, it's Antonio Gramsci." And he's like, "Who?" And I said, "Well, he was against fascists and he opposed Mussolini, and for that he landed in jail and then he died. I think he got murdered in jail." But this guy just like, "Who the hell is that?" I said, "Gramsci." I said, "Look him up. He wrote a thing called the prison letters, right?" That's
try and read that. You're getting amateurs.
I was being hilarious. I kind of pushed it a little bit. I don't think this guy was like, "Get out of here. What are you talking about?"
It's inscrutable, man. You need it to be like translated, not just literally, but also figuratively.
I mean, he asked. He was like, I said, "Nah, this can't be. This could not be your brother. This is a guy from the 30s. It's like 30s, 40s, I think. He was alive.
20s and 30s. Yeah, he died in about 35. Yeah.
I mean, I'm a big fan of Gramsci. The War of Position, like that's kind of my
hegemony.
That's why I study media.
The morbid interregnum.
There you go.
Which is Liverpool right now. We're in the morbid interregnum.
Oh yeah,
the old is dying and the new is not yet born.
I don't know if I want to say that. I think
it's not that I'm being too.
I think you could. Well, let me give me 2 seconds and I'll respond to you. Okay, so firstly, I think you probably is right about the old is not necessarily like being shut down. It's sort of slowly dying. So it's obvious that there was this generation of players that brought us a lot of success. And then they either got old or they need like a new kind of not inspiration, but something like a new desire to win stuff. So it was like James Milner got old, or I would imagine somebody that's why Sadio Mane left. Sadio Mane, Salah, they need something else to get to try to win again. So there's that. Then on the other, football is an unforgiving business. You have to keep winning. So if players get old, you need new players. I mean, that's just how this works. So you got Darwin Núñez, Luis Diaz, Fabio, what's his last name again? Carvalho. The young kid whose family's from Angola, but he grew up in Portugal, in London, sorry. So there's that. I agree with you about that. However, I feel like I don't want to base it on 2 draws and 1 loss. 1 loss in a derby in which people play out of their skins in derbies. So I want to wait and see. I'm not doing the trick of other clubs where I will not mention there will be no Klopp out from me.
No, God, no. That would be ridiculous.
Twitter is bad. Liverpool Twitter is bad. I'm not saying
all football Twitter is stupid. The point is that Klopp will make the next iteration himself, and he started doing that. But it's kind of like you realize that the spine of the team of that won the Champions League for Klopp, that won the Premier League for Klopp, has to be rotated out. Okay, we were talking about Maurice earlier. Who was the most consistent player in Klopp's success was Sadio Mane. Mane has gone. Mane was far more valuable to the team than the Twitterverse and the media coverage actually recognized. He carried out. He was much more important than Salah last season, much more important. And there's a big loss there. But also, he's 31 years old. He's recognizing something perhaps about that team. So you see, Klopp has started to put the new in place. So that Ibrahima Konate was bought as okay, here is a young player who's going to replace Matip, right, as at centre back as your first choice. But you also, you realize, like, you're looking at the midfield and the key players in the midfield, like, I mean, it feels like he has long COVID, Fabinho, or something. He just hasn't woken up right now. And I'm serious. That could be the case. But then you think, like, Klopp says witchcraft. It's like, no, Thiago Alcantara is always injured. He's not good for more than
Keita is never going to play like
25, 30 games season. Right. And this guy, and Milner is now 36. Henderson, I don't know, he's 36. But Henderson, his fires have gone out. And it's like, so Klopp has bought Elliott, and he's bringing Carvalho into the team on the left. He's building his new generation. He wants to buy Jude Bellingham. He wants to wait for Jude Bellingham.
That's what is going on about that.
He's actually making a new team. His team is in transition. Bobby Firmino is not the player he was. So it doesn't surprise me. And also, we burnt out. Last season was, for the players' mentality and morale, I think, awful. Like, we played 7 more games than everybody else. And we came away with nothing, because let's face it, if we're talking Yiddish slang,
we came away with the Community Shield.
We came away with the FA Cup and the League Cup, which are tchotchkes, to use another Yiddish term. They don't mean anything.
Probably full of tchotchkes, but
exactly. So it's like we missed the Champions League, we missed the league, despite having the players having killed themselves to get there. So, it's not surprising that and then it's like a month's break during which they have to fly to Thailand and do stupid, like, promotional stuff. So it doesn't surprise me at all that we look like we're knackered. We look like.
I will say, though, just on just one quick thing as an interlude, we then won this Community Shield, which is a preseason game. And because we won it so kind of emphatically, I think whatever you said, Liverpool dominated that game. So that gave people this kind of false sense of, like, oh, we're back. This is going to be like old times again. These guys, Darwin Núñez, I think he scored. Did he score? And he made another goal.
Yeah.
Right. So based on that, there was this sense that and then he played really well in the first draw. So there was the sense, like, oh, these guys can play. But I think now, as you said, maybe there was maybe a little bit of a blur, and there's a lot more work to do. But I will point out one other quick thing. We forget that the World Cup is going to be played in the middle of this season, and the one club whose top stars will not be in that World Cup, like the same kind of intent, like playing for like a whole month, then come back, then you just have to keep playing the Premier League. Like, I think Liverpool, Salah's not in that World Cup. I think Luis Diaz is not in that World Cup. Is Darwin Núñez? Is the Uruguay?
Yeah, Uruguay is there.
Yeah. But I don't expect Uruguay to go the full thing. They're not the same team. They got a young, inexperienced.
No, they're a strong team. Betancourt and the guy at Real, they're a really strong team. Anyway, just saying.
Anyway, their tactics never excite me. But maybe you're right. They play this kind of weird defensive football with some grit, and then they eventually like, hold up, why are they in the semifinal? But my thing is just, I think
I agree with you.
I will be fresh. Diaz will be fresh.
Robertson's not going either. Robertson's
not going either. Trent most likely won't go to the World Cup.
Well, if he does go, they won't pick him anyway. So it'll be like he'll go train at the light training at the World Cup
for a whole light. If he goes, he'll get light training at the World Cup. So there's like
Matip's not going.
Matip's not going. If Naby Keita doesn't leave and go to Germany or something, he'll still be around. So
Konate is not a first choice for France.
So we again I don't want to make this too much about Liverpool. So let's go before people call us the 11 named Liverpool players. So let's just run through like a couple of quick topics, because I know we want to just capture a bunch of stuff. So first one, which is it's kind of like chatter, which is I think our third episode, third or fourth episode, we had Will Yeomans on, and we talked about this Arsenal documentary, which, by the way, I haven't watched any of the other episodes since then. I don't see the point of it. The first couple of episodes just didn't gave me the impression that I needed this in my life, that I needed to go and watch the rest of that all or nothing thing. I did watch, however, this is just an aside before I get to the topic. I've been watching this thing called the Captain, which is about Derek Jeter, which is about baseball. But let's park that. It's an interesting series about how you control the narrative, like these, you know, the way Michael Jordan did the last. What was Michael Jordan's one called again? The last game or whatever. I think how you control your image. In any case, first up is, was I wrong about Arsenal? Because I was making jokes and I was very dismissive of Arteta as a coach, and lo and behold, they got 3 wins in a row. As we speak now, they're on top of the Premier League. They remain the only club with a 100% record. I know it's only 3 games. This is not the Arsenal as it stands now. They don't look like the Arsenal of last season. Am I just kind of like a hater and an idiot, or what? What do you feel?
No, I mean, I think your hater side is about the fans and the sort of annoying domination of the media in the UK by Arsenal fans. But I think that show told us nothing about Arteta's tactics and so on. They kept any of that out. It was like literally the whole show was like players at a free kick talking like that. Right? So we don't know, I mean, I think what's interesting, and, we were laughing, and as we should do maybe, at all the kind of motivational stuff Arteta was doing. And yet you can see that the biggest difference with this Arsenal team maybe is like mentality. Now, is that because they're looking at a lot of like Arteta's whiteboard drawings of like, silly little morality tales? Or is it because he's injected 2 absolutely key acquisitions, Jesus and Zinchenko, both of whom come from a culture of like winning teams, like from Manchester City, where they are never beaten until the 95th minute. They never give up. They know they can score, and they do. And you just look at Jesus has been incredible to watch. He's just, like, unbelievable. He's fighting for every ball and so on. But actually, I'm even more impressed by how much better Zinchenko is than he ever looked at Man City. You just see these 2 players who, we've got this, it's all good, we're going to score. And the effect that has on the players around them, like following Jesus into the area and playing with him there for Saka, for Martinelli, it was just amazing. You're playing with this guy who's just going to make things happen for you all the time. I
love this comment. I saw an interview with him where he said, I'm probably going to mess up the quote, but it's something like, I've never felt this free, or I can finally like play, which a lot of people was like, oh, he's sort of saying that Pep Guardiola is, the sort of criticism that people have had about Pep. Remember when, was it Zlatan who said Pep treats players like they're children and doesn't treat them like they're adults, that they're professionals, that they know how to play football? I like that he sort of said, now that he's at Arsenal, that he's allowed to play football again.
Well, I mean, but what that really means is that basically Pep used him from the right wing. He was never used as like a number 9 or any kind of center forward. And Arsenal has him as like the pivot, the key point in their attack. So he's playing centrally. He's got a wide player on each side of him. So, I mean, he is free because, he's not like limited to, and also in a Pep, you can see in a Pep team, you don't get to drift into spaces and see what you can make happen. And
unless you're Bernardo Silva or something, unless you're the designated person to go into.
Except that what's interesting, if you watch Man City now and the dynamics, I mean, I don't know, it's hard to say, we're not in the dressing room, but it really looks a lot to me like, Haaland is bought and they're all like, Haaland, and he's a monster and he's going to basically destroy every defense and he's going to score hundreds of goals and he's going to make the difference. He's the man for Man City. And Kevin De Bruyne is like, excuse me, like, this is my team. I make this team win. I make this team play. To me, the fact that Gundogan is their highest scorer this year, I think, or certainly looks that way, is a sign of they're playing De Bruyne's game. Still, like it's like often what Haaland is doing is a foil for, he's a,
and also that's not a bad thing, by the way. I mean, it's an obsession, I think, in the way we watch football, or the way we see highlight shows, or the way people talk about it. It's about goals. But I like this, the kind of the idea of a player who's like a decoy, runs off the ball, draws defenders. I think that if Haaland, I mean, I don't know, for some strange reason, I kind of like Haaland because I think people would like for him to fail. He doesn't come across as a terrible person. I know we've talked about how he, you know me, I do have I like players with good politics. So
does he have good politics?
We talked about this, like when you say I don't want to go play in the World Cup because of the way that workers are treated in Qatar, and then it turns out, well, Norway was not going to qualify anyway. So it's like making a political statement when the costs are very low. So we don't know like what would happen if he hasn't said anything about sort of petro states in his own club. Like he hasn't said anything about that at Manchester City. So that would be an interesting.
Okay.
That would be an interesting thing. So, but I don't know. I feel like there's a clamor to see him fail, but he's scoring goals. It's early days. He might still prove people wrong. But let's move on to the next one, which is another English football club. I think for some reason we're still stuck in England here. Crystal Palace. We've been wanting to talk about them for a while, and let me just sort of lay out why I think they're interesting. On Twitter, I use the phrase African Palace, the African Palace. It was not because I was thinking about the coronation of the Zulu king. Let's not get into the politics of that. It's more because of how this club, I think during the African Cup of Nations, at least 8 of the players went and played in the Cup of Nations. Like the best player on the field, their best player, Wilfried Zaha, plays for Cote d'Ivoire. He wasn't really a star in that tournament. He came off the bench. Actually, Nicolas Pepe, who I see now has gone to Nice, he was more of a star in that team. But in any case, so you have a team made up of these in London, made up of a lot of African players or players of African descent. Eze, I really like the way Eze plays football. I think when you sort about saying Manchester City is De Bruyne's team, I wonder if Crystal Palace is going to be Eze's team. This kid, I remember last season when he came off the bench, I was like, who is this kid? But in any case, you've got all these African players. You've got
I was going to say Michael Olise might have something to say about Eze being the genius.
Genius in the team. They got Edouard, etc. They got the Ghanaian, what's his name, who's sort of a wingback.
Jeffrey Schlupp.
Jeffrey Schlupp. So then you have the coach Vieira, who was born in Senegal, who's currently the only coach who is of African descent. I mean, he's very much a product of French football. But nevertheless, I think it's interesting that last year I was more sort of just rooting for them because I was worried that that they could get relegated, and then that would lead to people not trusting an African coach or a coach of African descent to like lead a team in like the world's most watched, the most wealthiest league in the world. But this season, I just like how they play football. I think they're really good. And I mean, to go back to Liverpool, watching them against Liverpool, everybody thought, we were just going to come in there, beat up on them, and they would come to Anfield and Liverpool would just win. And then it turns out Liverpool like dominates the beginning of the game, and then they beat Liverpool on the counter with Eze with that nice pass to Zaha, and he beats, he beats, I think it was Van Dijk, right? It was Konate or Van Dijk, I can't remember. And then he just, it was Nathan Phillips, sorry. And then he beats the goalkeeper. So in any case, I don't know what else is. I just wanted to note that.
I think so. I was going to say something. I mean, I agree with you. There's like the sentimental thing, which I call them the new Portsmouth. Remember back in the day when Portsmouth was literally the African team, where Kanu played for them, Benjani Mwaruwari, Bissan Laurent. I think they had
like, that guy who used to play for Everton when they're always there.
Yes, yeah. They had more African players than any team in the Premier League.
What is his name? Oh God, I'll get to his name.
Yeah, but so that's like a sentimental thing. Like they weren't particularly interesting to watch or whatever. As you say, Crystal Palace plays absolutely lovely football. They're one of there are a whole lot of teams now in the Premier League that play. You used to think of like teams in the bottom third as being Sam Allardyce teams who are going to be very physical, who are going to basically play like long ball, going to defend, park the bus and throw long balls forward onto a big forward who is going to, get lucky sometimes, like just sort of ugly to watch. And, nowadays you think, you watch these are not bottom teams, but you watch the way Newcastle play, you watch the way Nottingham Forest play, you watch the way Fulham played against us. Like teams play open attacking football. Palace has really been a joy to watch. And I will say something heretical as a Liverpool fan. This nonsense that Steven Gerrard is sometime going to be the manager of Liverpool. It's like people do not get carried away with stupid fantasies. Gerrard was so palpably, noticeably, tactically undisciplined when he was playing for Rafa. Gerrard is not going to be the person who brings the sense that you need to manage a top tier team right now. And the same with Frank Lampard. These guys must go manage England because you don't have to be the smartest tactical manager to manage a national team. But Vieira, on the other hand, is looking. I'd sooner take Vieira as Liverpool's manager than Gerrard. Just saying.
I actually like that idea. I like that idea of Vieira coming to. I would back that, especially for Liverpool, given Liverpool's own history with race. It would be like a major statement if a club like Liverpool in that part of the UK, in the the northeast, the northwest, sorry, close to the Irish Sea. If one of the clubs in that part of the world takes an African coach or African manager, I think it would be incredible. I was just thinking that when you said it, and the other part of the story, the setup is they just beat Aston Villa on Saturday. I remember we were talking about it, how they destroyed Aston Villa on Saturday. And Zaha pulled, I think, a similar goal, like the one he did against Liverpool. Same pass from Eze. And then there was the two goals at the end by the two substitutes that came on, the Edouard and the other one, whose name now slips me. But yeah, I like Crystal Palace. And you're right. Whereas last time it was sentiment, right now they're just good. They're well coached. And I have better hope for I feel they're like my second team. I always in the Premier League, I have like a team that I support. And last time I used to like Leeds because of Bielsa as the other team, and then because of their South African connection. But this time around, I think I like Crystal Palace as this other team I like watching.
So you're not getting your American side is not.
Well, so follow up from that. So on that. And Vieira doesn't qualify under this. I did say that he's a coach of African descent who kind of represents, who if you come from Africa, there's sort of like the sentimental thing that you have or emotional kind of connection. And then there was Nuno Espirito Santo, who is from Sao Tome and Principe, who he grew up there a little bit and then went to Portugal, and his grandfather is African, but I think his grandmother is Portuguese. So that's to park that for a minute. So there's that kind of coach, but that's somebody who also grew up football wise in Portugal. And as I said, Vieira grows up football wise in France. But the question is and this is to get to this connection to Leeds. on Saturday, what Leeds did was Leeds wins with Jesse Marsch as the coach, right? Jesse Marsch is American. There's a lot of fun that was being made about the fact that Leeds hired this American coach. I was reading yesterday, people thought he was going to be like Ted Lasso. Like this is a TV comedy about this like bumbling coach who when he gets hired says something like, "We're going to play hard." I'm again, loosely quoting, all 4 quarters. So he doesn't. I mean, it's a send up. But so there is this kind of prejudice, or it's sometimes humorous, but I also think it's very cutting, which is that we don't really think an American would know how to like run an elite football team in Europe, and particularly not in the Premier League. So Jesse Marsch, right? He comes in. He actually did coach at I think it was Ralph Rangnick's assistant at Leipzig. From there, he actually gets to coach a team at Salzburg, and then he gets to Leeds. So it's not that he comes out of nowhere, but he's still considered like an American coach. The other coach that I wanted to mention was this guy called Ange Postecoglou, who's like the coach of Celtic. He's from Australia, immigrant, Greek immigrant. Again, very much, coaching in Australian soccer, gets to coach the national team, coaches a team in Japan, and from there he gets to Celtic. And when he also came to Celtic, there was a lot of like joking around, ridiculing him. People asking like, who is this guy? But then in his first season, now I know the Scottish League is not the Premier League, it's not La Liga, it's not Serie A, but he wins the Scottish Premier League. I think he also wins like the kind of the league, the cup competition. And everybody now goes on like, wow, he's actually not a terrible coach. So the point, the sort of, it's not necessarily a question, but I'm just wondering like, and after Saturday, right, when Jesse Marsch, they beat Chelsea, like, I mean, he literally, like, was it 3-0 or something?
Yeah.
Against Chelsea. So like, this is like, they played really well. And he showed that he's like, that he's a very good coach. So my question is just sort of like, is this and I'll stop here because I have another part to this, but is this the beginning maybe of coaches in these top leagues coming from these like non-traditional places? In other words, outside of Europe. We know South American coaches in Europe, mostly in Spain, sometimes in Italy. A few, I think, were in France. But could we see this, like this, the change now with this?
Yeah, so I think, remember last week when we had Adam Abubakar on with us, we were talking about transfer of technology, to use an economist's term. But if you think about the technology of the way what a coach does today, and the way that the game is played and the way that the game is set up, you think that like the idea, compared with say 20 years ago, 25 years ago, where if you hadn't played in the leagues that you're coaching, if you hadn't absorbed the culture of those particular leagues, those particular dressing rooms, the chemistry of like what it meant to be an Everton fan, an Everton player, all of that stuff, you were just lost. Like it would have been unthinkable. It would have been Ted Lasso. Versus now, where actually the level of sort of tactical nous that can be learned, right, and that the game is played in a much more advanced tactical way with much more athletic science, etc. You have to be able to manage people, players, and deal with chemistry and deal with issues and all of that. But basically, if you're tactically if you're going to basically just go out and do your thing, your team's going to get killed. Like that's what's really going to happen. Versus if you've absorbed those lessons of tactical football over the last say 30 years, you are actually able, even if you've played in relatively minor leagues or whatever, the basic principles, the basic science of football tactics is something you understand, and you can set something up to work in a basic way. So it shouldn't surprise us that, like, I mean, if you think about, okay, we're talking about England. How many English coaches are there in the English Premiership? Actually, like tiny amount, and it's shrinking. Even the number of, like, it used to be, oh yeah, but they're all Scottish. Now, even the number of Scottish coaches is shrinking. The number of Portuguese coaches for a long time was higher than the number of British coaches. And you know, it's German coaches, Portuguese coaches, and it's much more of a.
Who are the English coaches right now in the Premier League? Even
Graham Potts, the Brighton guy,
not to disrespect them,
Lampard,
that's like an also ran club. That's not like a.
The most accomplished one is probably Eddie Howe at Newcastle.
Right. Frank Lampard, etc. Yeah. I mean, I think to your point about technology transfer, I think there's going to be a moment in which, so Australia and England are sort of seen, sorry, Australia and the United States are kind of seen as extensions of Europe. So even if
I wouldn't bet on Australia, I'd bet on the United States. Just saying, Australia's population
the US, yeah. Maybe this guy's
like too small and they play other games. Like most of their focus on developing talent. So even if they outperform relative to their numbers in the way that Holland does in football, they're going to reflect that in cricket and rugby, essentially. Australia.
The other part of this is, and I was showing you this before the show. So the other quick comment was like, you know, we'll probably see more coaches. We'll see more coaches from probably Argentina. I mean, not Brazil necessarily, but it does look like if you come from Argentina, you might. There's been a few, right? Top coaches in Spain.
Pochettino.
Yeah, from Argentina. Pochettino was in the Premier League.
And the guy at Atletico Madrid, like.
Yeah, but whether he wants to come to the Premier League, that's Simeone. That's
Simeone, yeah.
I'm not. Yeah, I wonder if he would survive in the Premier League because of like like how animated he is. Like, I don't think they like animation in the Premier League. But I was just gonna say, I'm just always wondering whether some places in the world will still be excluded from that. And I don't want to make this a long thing, but like the one is, so there was that interview, remember, in the New York Times, well, it was a little sort of interview profile in January or February with Pitso Mosamani, who's the South African coach who was at Al Ahly, and he had won 2 African Champions League. He had taken the team to the World Club Cup, where the first time I think he was in the semifinals, and the second time he was in the final. And then he didn't do badly, but after 3 or 4 seasons there, he lost his job at Al Ahly. And I saw now that he has been unable to. He actually, in that interview, went on about how difficult it was for an African coach to ever coach a top, to coach in a European league. And I now saw the other day he's back in South Africa, coaching like one of the sort of Premier League, like local Premier League squads. So that might be. It might, if people from non-traditional places are going to make it, like you said, most likely they're going to come from the US. I don't think they're going to come.
But I would say, Sean, if we take it a bit further, that if you're going to get African coaches, former players that are going to become coaches, they're going to come from West Africa first. That South Africa just hasn't had a very big playing pool at the top level of the game.
Well, Benny's at Man. Not to make this about South Africa, but Benny's as a coach at Man United.
Yeah, like he's a mid-level sort of coach. But the thing is, like, Benny was an exception. Benny, Quentin Fortune, Lucas Radebe, Phil Masinga. Like, count the number of South Africans who've made an impression in the Premiership. You won't even get to 10 over the whole history of the Premier League.
The only West African player right now that I think, or maybe until recently he was a coach, was Kolo Toure, who was helping out at Leicester. I don't know if he's still there. So he was like a positional coach there.
Yeah, and you could see Yaya Toure being a coach. I mean, Vieira, because Vieira might have played for France, but Vieira is Cabo Verdean from Senegal.
Right. This is my thing. I'm just saying, like, there's a way in which Vieira is representative of something, but technically he's not necessarily from. He didn't grow up in Senegal. He's not a product of the Senegalese football setup. He's very much a product of France. But even with that, I'm not going to make that like a strict thing. If you're Didier Drogba, for example, as much as he's seen as Ivorian football player, he's really a product also as a teenager. He goes to France, and he's really a product of French football.
But because they're trying to win it. Because if you think about the way you're phrasing the question, you're recognizing that Europe is the center of the game. Because you're asking when are there going to be African coaches in Europe, i.e., at the top tier of the game. So it's okay. Like, yes, it's only going to be players who.
It's going to be a former player. But having said that, Black European former players are saying like there's like zero. It's like they've had very few chances to become coaches. The most recent one I saw was a Dutch kind of Red Bull sort of complex type website. They interview. I've been, we understand and can read Dutch. So I was listening to an interview. Actually, they got a great interview with Jabril Cisse, but I'll park that, which I haven't finished yet. But they one with Edgar Davids, and the whole interview was, the kind of usual stuff. Edgar Davids and Memphis Depay had gone to Ghana because Memphis's father's Ghanaian, so they did the usual like charity stuff, met with the prime president, blah blah blah. But at the end of it, the interview just sort of says to Edgar Davids, "What do you make of the comment that Ruud made that black players may only become assistants?" And the point about this was, Ruud was an assistant to Dick Advocaat when he was the manager of the Dutch national team. And he complained about the fact that he was at the practice, but he wasn't allowed to coach people. They told him just stand there between the forwards, but don't like do anything. And then, to his credit, when Dick Advocaat left, he told the Dutch FA make Ruud the coach. And because I think he connects with the players, he's respected as a footballer. And at that point, remember, he was player coach at Chelsea. I think he coached Newcastle, a couple of other teams, and even coached in the US. I think he was at Red Bulls or something? I can't even remember. But so they didn't pick him, and so that's where Ruud made that comment earlier this year. And in this thing, that Edgar Davids' response was sort of something like, I'm not shocked. It's like I was trying to translate it literally, but he said it's like a pole above water. It's like, we know that it's not going to happen. They're not going to pick a black player as a coach. The interesting thing is Edgar Davids. He was an assistant. I think he is an assistant to Van Gaal in the Dutch national team right now, or until recently, and so is Kluivert. So again, proving the point: you can only be an assistant. You can never be a coach. So my point is just like, it's even you saying like, if they're going to be black coaches or coaches outside of the sort of non-traditional countries, if it's even that hard for a top player from a traditional country, Clarence Seedorf, Ruud,
I mean, you could say that
you can't even become coach.
But you could say that Ruud and Frank Rijkaard are on the other side of that equation. They were both. I mean, Rijkaard was the Barcelona coach.
Yeah.
So I mean, there are, and you could also see that like the Dutch school of sort of tactical football, that like players who've been through that are far more advanced in some ways.
Maybe I should just correct what I was trying to say. I think they were saying like they cannot become the coach of the Dutch national team, which is like a big prize, right? And they will not.
I don't know why. I actually seriously don't think
you wouldn't want to become the coach of that team.
I think that like coaches of like European clubs in the top tier and the Premier League versus national team coaches. National team coaches are a lesser level of the game. It's like something that Klopp might do when he retires, effectively from club football, because you're not managing.
I don't want to get into it too much, but if your national team football is so regular now, like it's not like in the past where you played like there's a tournament and then you like remember there was like some coaches who would coach like a national team and they would coach a club. Like so, again these Dutch coaches. I forget his name. He coached Russia and Australia at one point. What is his name? But he was coaching a club team and coaching that team. I don't think you can do that anymore. What I'm trying to say to you is like I agree with you that coaching Barcelona, coaching Chelsea, that's top tier. But I'm also saying like you got if you're a national coach now, you're playing that Nations Cup thing, you're playing Euros, if you're in Europe, and you're playing the World Cup. So there's like, you're doing a lot more coaching if you're coaching at that top level for a national team than in the past, like a part-time job.
I ask you this. Can you imagine any Premier League team hiring Gareth Southgate as their coach?
I think I'm losing this argument.
I mean, it's just like, no, it's, or like Van Basten was the coach of Holland for a while. Van Basten's not a club coach anywhere. It's like, you don't have to be this as capable as a club coach.
I'm probably wrong about this, but I think in some places there is still a certain prestige about.
As prestige, of course.
Not as like it's. You'd probably prefer to coach Barcelona or coach Ajax. Or
you'd get more respect in the game for coaching a club than coaching a national team.
But I think the show after all is called 11 Named People. So I think there is. I don't know. I sort of feel like in some of these smaller countries there might be some prestige about still coaching these kind of, coaching.
Yeah, I mean, like you wish that in Africa they'd stop bringing in sort of people from the Balkans that no one's ever heard of.
Anyway, we got one other topic, and we'll do this one quickly, which is, and I'll put this on the screen, which is this is also the week in which we learned about who's going to play in the Champions League groups. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to get the. I think I have it here. Let's see.
You're looking for the graphic of the Champions League.
I'm looking for the graphic. I had it earlier, but now I've lost it. But it's basically like who's going to play in what groups.
Yeah, I mean, so there are a couple of. I mean, there's nothing particularly dramatic in there. I wouldn't want to be in Group C where you have like Inter Milan. Oh, there it is. Like Group C. Barcelona, Bayern, Inter Milan. That's a tough.
Oh yeah, that's a nasty group. That's a nasty group.
What actually I really like about the Barcelona Bayern matchup is that Lewandowski is going to be playing against his old club who made him very angry. Like bit of revenge for Lewandowski there. Similarly, Haaland's going to be playing against Borussia Dortmund, although he's got no reason to complain against them. But because we take a very political view of football, it should be obvious to me that to me the most interesting tie here is in Group H between Paris Saint-Germain and Maccabi Haifa.
Oof, yeah.
Because why is Israel has violated international law in the same way that Ukraine has violated international law. It's an illegal. I'm sorry, that Russia has in Ukraine. Israel is an illegal occupying power, etc., disrupting football. No problem banning Russia. Israel is still in UEFA. Like, so, there's the what's up with that. But in Paris Saint-Germain's fan base, there's considerable degree of solidarity with Palestine. And even among the players, there was a famous incident. Weirdly, for some reason, last season, they played like the French, like,
yeah,
this FA Cup or whatever in Israel. Like, for what?
Well, they play Spain, I think, and Italy played their cup finals in Saudi Arabia.
Right, and so you don't have all of this
anymore. It's not
there's a PSG fullback Ashraf Hakimi who was like being booed in Israel for like demonstrating solidarity with Palestine while he was in that game, and I suspect FIFA, I mean, UEFA doesn't mind you flying Ukrainian flags wherever you go, but I'm pretty sure you're going to see, in the Paris Saint-Germain stadium, there will be considerable degree of solidarity with Palestine being expressed when they play Maccabi Haifa, which, of course, under FIFA rules, UEFA rules, is illegal. So let's see what happens. I suspect that will be a politically very tasty tie.
Is Roma playing in this thing, or no? They didn't make it. They play in the Europa League, right?
Yeah,
Because I know Roma and Tottenham also recently played in Israel, like preseason. So it's like.
Well, Tottenham has a historic relationship. I mean, I remember during one of the I don't know if it was the 2014, 2008, one of the times when Israel was bombing Gaza and rockets were being fired at Israel, Tottenham offered Israel to host a home game in like a World Cup qualifier or Euro qualifier. Like Tottenham were offering Israel to play its home games in Tottenham Stadium.
So you're not shocked by it. Anyway, the matches I'm looking forward to: Liverpool, Napoli, because I have a soft spot for Napoli, Maradona's club.
Well, interesting thing about Liverpool, Napoli. Whenever we play, they're a bit of a bogey team. We often lost.
They always play us. That's an interesting.
And we lost. And the player that always did the most damage to us was Insigne. Where's Insigne now? Toronto. It's like, man, this guy's like Italian international at the peak of his powers, and
he's not going to go to the World Cup. Italy's not going to the World Cup. It doesn't.
Well, Italy's not going to the World Cup.
By the way, there was, just on that, a small point. There was another Italian guy who played at Toronto, and actually he played in the Italian national team. Also, a little kind of a striker, short little striker. Do you remember this? This was in MLS.
Yeah.
Like before, I think the 2014 World Cup, and he was like a regular. That was his prime of his career, and he still played out in.
So you know what? I mean, you're reminding me now. The strangest club affiliation of a European international I'll ever remember is Gignac. You remember Andre Pierre Gignac?
Oh, in Mexico.
French striker. Yeah. And he was playing for France, and he's playing in the Mexican League, which was just extraordinary. Like, that was unheard of. That a player from a European national team was playing in a domestic league in the global south. That was like,
I think that was in the time of that European Cup, the one that Portugal won. He was playing for France at the top. I couldn't. You're like, hold up. But this is the sort of the way teams are unbalanced. Remember, like 2014 Brazil's striker was a guy, I think he played in the Brazilian league. I forget his name again. So this is when, like, I used to remember every player. But this is like a tall striker. He didn't score one goal, but it's that kind of imbalance. Like at that point, I don't know why France didn't have enough strikers. Oh, that might be the time when they didn't want Karim Benzema in the team. So they had that Gignac guy play at in front. So those things happen. In any case, this was great. This was great. This was us freestyling, as we say. Mm-hmm. I was wrong. It seems I'm wrong about the idea of like that the national team matters.
No, that's the thing.
National in global capitalism, you're right. In global capitalism, this is you got to go for a club team.
Corporations are transcending nation states. It's like
I think when I'm thinking back of it now, I think the Dutch point was more like it was very specifically Dutch. So it's like if Rijkaard and Gullit has had a chance to coach top teams like Chelsea and Barcelona, you can't say the same for somebody like Aaron Winter. Remember Aaron Winter? Mm-hmm. For Inter? I think he was like he actually was the coach of Toronto FC. I think Davids was a player coach. Remember in like a lower league in the football league. Remember he like punched somebody. This was like a kind of a viral thing a couple of seasons ago. Giovanni van Bronckhorst is an exception. He's Rangers, and I think
the guy who used to be at Chelsea, Jimmy
Hasselbank. He had some, but he was again also he's currently a coach, I think, in the football, the lower reaches of the football league. But again, he's not coaching like a top class. Mm-hmm. He's not in England, he's not in Spain, or he's not in Italy. And Seedorf had like a brief moment as the coach of AC Milan, and then I think he was coach of Cameroon. So I think that's this kind of peculiar sort of the politics of Dutch football. And I don't know if you remember, in Dutch football, there was always like this. There's a long kind of dispute or feelings of alienation that black players feel within the kind of the national setup. I remember there was that time when Seedorf and Davids, I'm trying to remember the other player was with them. They had a problem with the coach. And I think it was with Van Basten, and they had a thing about how he picked players and who he favored, and particularly how he treated black players. So there's a longer story to the Dutch thing that is, because in this clip, if you see Davids, when he gets asked, he kind of like holds the mic and sort of goes like, I don't really want to talk about this. I don't need, because remember Cruyff also criticized him when he was at Ajax. And said something like, you're only there because you're black. So there's a lot of there's a lot of stuff in the Dutch story that is sort of lurking under those comments. In any case, thanks, Tony. Enjoy your time wherever you are. I think you're in a good surroundings.
And hopefully the weekend passes without too much misery for Liverpool.
Yeah, the dread. I think our dread's gonna.
We're back to dread. We're back to dread for the lowliest games. Like, yeah. But okay,
I don't know. We
collective suffering. Yeah.
I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. What are we calling this? The African Palace, the coronation, the Zulu Kingdom.
Let's go offline and let's take this
offline. Talk about it. Anyway, goodbye, people. Take it easy.